Brian from Georgia.
I'm here.
How are you?
Hi, Brian.
Hey, everybody. I watch this show all the time. I grew up in a Christian home, so I know what it's like to live a Christian lifestyle. But while it's a wonderful lifestyle, when I tried to, much like Matt, when I tried to validate it using logic, using reason, using everything else we know about the world, I couldn't come to validate it. I could not come to accept it as truth, and I had to reject it consequently. You know, I do have lots of religious discussions with people, and most times there's a lot of confusion about the terminology, what it means to be an atheist, what it means to be agnostic, or a theist or a deist. And so I was wondering if you two could clarify each of those terms and maybe tell the audience and viewers what it means to be a strong atheist and why you are a strong atheist.
Sure. A theist is somebody who believes in a God. An atheist doesn't. An atheist, that doesn't necessarily mean they believe there's no God, although they could. And an agnostic, well, it depends on what kind of agnostic you're talking about. I find the term to be largely useless, and I know that pisses off all kinds of people who would prefer to use that label. I think it's useless because at the core of it, you're saying, I don't know. Well, okay, I'm asking what you believe. I mean, basically, by what most people mean by agnosticism, they're atheists. Because theism is the positive, the position of positively having a belief. I believe X. And anything other than that qualifies as atheism, at least according to my definitions.
Right.
The strong atheist position is one where you believe that there is no God. I'm a strong atheist. I actually believe there is no God. I have no idea who else is or isn't, or whether or not they agree with those definitions. I believe there is no God. Now, do I make this claim and say that I'm convinced there's absolutely no God, or that I'm absolutely convinced? No.
So you're basically talking about relative terms.
Yeah.
You're not talking about absolute knowledge or absolute truth.
Nope. I reject claims of absolute certainty outside of
and that's what I do.
experiential, esoteric,
that's exactly
and
what I
logical
do.
absolutes. Yeah.
And
Okay.
you had also asked to explain why. Like, why would I be a strong atheist?
Why would anyone want to be a strong atheist?
I would be a strong atheist for the same reason I would strongly say that I don't believe that fairies exist. If I can say that I do not believe fairies exist, or that fairies do not exist, I can say God does not exist with the same conviction, because there is no more evidence for either. So if I find it interesting that nobody chastises me for saying that there's no such thing as fairies, and yet if I say there's no such thing as God, I get all kinds of, how can you make such a declarative statement? Well, how come you don't think it's weird that I say there's no such, I don't mean you, but like when people ask me this, why don't I get criticism for saying there's no such thing as fairies?
Yeah. And it's, I couldn't possibly agree more. It's one thing for somebody to say, let's take the God thing out of it, use the analogy. Person A says, I believe in fairies. They are the fairy equivalent of a theist. And anybody who doesn't say, I believe in fairies, is the fairy equivalent of an atheist. I'm not only an atheist, I'm a strong atheist, or perhaps an anti-theist if you wanted, and I'm that way for fairies. I don't just not accept the claim fairies are real, I accept the claim fairies aren't real.
Right.
Because not only is there no evidence to support the claim fairies are real, all the evidence we've ever found supports the claim fairies aren't real. I mean, you know, that people have faked it. We understand more and more about how human thought processes work, and how we try to assuage our ignorance with whatever explanation we can plug in there. And everything leads me to the conclusion that the most rational explanation is that fairies don't actually exist. Somebody made this up. It is something that has entered the culture as a meme, and it is progressed, and people have believed or not believed. And I think this applies to fairies and gremlins and leprechauns and mermaids and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and gods. And matter of fact, I'm getting more and more kind of bothered when we use the term in the singular, because then it sounds like we're addressing a specific one.
Right.
I'll be happy to address any specific one that somebody wants to specifically define. Until then, by and large, the gods thing just is made up, in my opinion. However, there are people out there, well, you're holding an irrational position, then you can't know that there aren't any such thing as gods. You're right, and I can't know that there aren't fairies, because when you're using no in that sense, you're saying that I can't be absolutely certain that my claim is true, which is something I never claimed at all, never asserted. On the other hand, I don't have the burden of proof. I do if I'm trying to convince you, for example, if I say fairies don't exist, and I'm trying to convince you to that strong position, I have the burden of proof. And the same is true if I was trying to convince people gods don't exist. I don't adopt that position on the show or talk about it, because all that does is it does the same thing as we were talking about earlier when you say I can neither prove nor disprove. It sets up a false dichotomy that ignores the burden of proof. The burden of proof is on the claimant. And if I'm making a claim and trying to convince you, I would have the burden of proof. But when we're talking about claims of existence, existential claims of this is real, then the assumption is not X exists until we prove it wrong. Otherwise, we'd believe everything. It's nothing exists until it is demonstrable.
Okay, well, thank you guys for the
Sure.
Thanks a
taking
lot.
my call.